a group of unidentified men infiltrated the North Korean embassy in Spain, stealing computers and mobile phones before making their escape. There were 10 infiltrators, which include South Korean, American, and Mexican nationals. One of them made contact with the FBI in New York. Korean Central News Agency reported that its foreign ministry spokesman defined this case as a serious terrorist act, and that the illegal entry, occupation, and robbery of a foreign legation is a serious and aggressive violation of international laws. Pyongyang claims it is keeping close tabs on various rumors about the incident, including that the FBI and anti-North Korean group are involved in the attack. Free Chosun, the group that claimed responsibility for the incident, pointed out it shared valuable information with the FBI at the Bureau's request. The U.S. State Department promptly denied any involvement, saying that the American government had nothing to do with this case.
Who ordered the CIA to assault North Korea's embassy in Spain? Any hint of U.S. involvement in an assault on a diplomatic compound could have derailed the talks, a prospect of which the CIA would likely be mindful. Infiltrating the North Korean embassy days before the nuclear summit would throw that all into jeopardy, said Sumi Terry, a former Korea analyst at the CIA. Experts say the computers and phones seized in the raid contain a treasure trove of information that foreign intelligence agencies are likely to seek out from the group. The assailants also possess a video recording they took during the raid, which they could release anytime, said one person who, like others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive and illegal operation. After analyzing the recordings of the security cameras in the area, questioning the hostages, and analyzing the diplomatic vehicles used in the flight, it has been possible to identify some of the assailants. Although the majority were Koreans, at least 2 of them have been recognized by the Spanish information services for their links with the American CIA. The indications that point to the US espionage service, in probable cooperation with that of South Korea, are so strong that Spanish interlocutors have contacted the CIA to ask for explanations. The response was negative, but unconvincing, according to government sources. Strangely, before the notification, few in Washington's community of North Korea antagonists seemed to be aware of Free Joseon or its recent activities. Honestly, I don't know anything about them, said Greg Scarlatoiu, the executive director of the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, HRNK. So who are these guys, and what are they really up to? Are they working for the CIA? Why has a lawyer who has represented clients in important national security cases suddenly emerged as their spokesperson? The nation has gathered enough strands of information to provide some preliminary answers. First, there is strong evidence that Hong has connections to U.S. intelligence agencies. According to the European analyst with ties to Spanish law enforcement, Spanish police and intelligence officials have solid proof that Hong met with known CIA officials in Spain, including photographs and communication records. In April, the right-wing Chosun Ilbo, South Korea's largest newspaper, which is known for its contacts with South Korean intelligence, reported that Hong signed a government contract about 8 years ago and that his consulting work often involved the CIA. And in 2018, according to a prominent North Korean defector interviewed by the Washington Post, Hong was in Washington for a meeting at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Verlowski's lawyer for the gang background in national security could explain why he represents Free Joseon. During his years as Director for Transnational Threats at the National Security Council under Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, he was responsible for several important investigations, including that of the U.S. blacklisting of a bank in Macau that was linked to North Korea. From 2015 to 2017, Volosky was President Barack Obama's special envoy on closing the U.S.
Let's start at the
detention.
beginning here. It is completely unprecedented and extremely sad and unfortunate that the Department of Justice is, for the first time ever, executing arrest warrants against U.S. citizens based on criminal complaints of North Korea and based on the accounts of North Korean witnesses who we know not to be credible. Our Frijo Son has represented from the beginning, before there were arrest warrants, that they were invited into the embassy in Madrid. And while we cannot go into great detail at this point about what happened in the embassy, even the photographs that you just showed on your air demonstrate that there was no attack, there was no assault, there was no invasion of the embassy. This is Christopher Ahn.
Yeah, we have those photos now. Let's show them at the same time. You've got them, and there he is.
I got some of them. This is a photograph of Christopher Ahn, who is a former U.S. Marine, decorated, served in Fallujah. He's now being held in federal detention in Los Angeles by our government, pending extradition to Spain, on an allegation that he somehow invaded or assaulted the North Korean embassy in Madrid. Clearly, he looks like he's out for a Sunday stroll there. There he looks like he's listening to a podcast. And we have the photograph, there it is, of him actually entering the embassy. So these accounts upon which this extradition request is made are based on accounts of North Korean officials in that embassy who frankly are terrified for their lives for engaging with an opposition group. They have made up a story of an assault which is disproven by the very photographs you just showed.
Yeah, here's the part of the complaint of what the federal authorities say, that they had knives and bags and rope and this sort of thing. Here's the quote. Two of the members of Chang, that means Adrian, two members of the group identified themselves as belonging to a human rights association, a movement for the liberation of North Korea. The group systematically searched the embassy. During the search, they seized a couple of pen drives, 2 computers, 2 hard drives, and a mobile telephone. Chang, meaning Adrian, turned over to the FBI items seized from the embassy. I mean, you can't go, though, the prosecutors say, break in and rob. You say they didn't do that. They were invited in. So what happens to the stuff they gave to the FBI? Did the FBI say, great, thanks? Or did they slap the handcuffs on them?
Well, apparently they're seeking to put the handcuffs on him. As I said, they already have one of them in federal detention. You don't have to believe my account for it. You just have to look at the very photographs that you just showed. There was no assault on the embassy. It's time for these American citizens to be let go.
And what if they are not? What if they are extradited to Spain, as the Spanish judge wants? What do you fear could happen to them?
Well, we have received no assurances from the Spanish government or from the U.S. government that they will not be sent to North Korea. This was an offense against North Korea, that is clear. North Korea made the criminal complaint upon which Spain is acting. And we all know what happens to Americans who end up in the custody of North Korea.
Good afternoon for our second panel. We have here today in Ottawa from the Joseon Institute, Mr. Adrian Hong, the president, and from Han Voice, Mr. Jakim, special advisor. Adrian Hong is the president of the Joseon Institute, which conduct research and planning in preparation for political change in Korean Peninsula. He's also the co-founder of the Liberty in North Korea, based in California, an organization that assists North Koreans to leave the country, provide resettlement assistance, and advocates with respect to the situation faced by the North Korean people. In 2006, he was imprisoned in China for helping North Korea escape the country. Mr. Hong.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the members of this committee for your ongoing advocacy for the protection of human rights around the world, and today in particular, your attention to one of the world's worst concentrations of mass atrocities in modern history. The condition of human rights in North Korea has been well documented by thousands of survivors and escapees and corroborated by satellite imagery. Several nations around the world have pursued measures to address the situation of North Korean human rights and refugee protection. The United States, Japan, and South Korea after 11 years, each have passed their own version of the North Korean Human Rights Act. These acts have collectively established policies for the acceptance of refugees to their respective jurisdictions, the establishment of ambassador-level representatives coordinating policies.
Mr. Hong, would you please slow down a little bit, because we have the translation to French as well.
I will.
Thank you.
I apologize, translators. These acts have collectively established policies for the acceptance of refugees to their respective jurisdictions, the establishment of ambassador-level representatives, coordinating policies on North Korean human rights, funding to support defector groups and human rights advocacy organizations, the creation of databases on North Korean human rights violations, and provisions to try to ensure that humanitarian assistance to North Korea is not diverted for unintended use. Broadly speaking, while the acts have helped to clarify the status of refugees fleeing from the North and helped to raise awareness of atrocities in the country, they have had little to no effect on the condition of human rights on the ground inside North Korea. The 2004 North Korean Human Rights Act in the United States, for example, mandated that the United States government, and accordingly its embassies and consulates abroad, work to protect and process North Korean refugees for resettlement to the United States. In December 2006, I and two colleagues in China took the law at face value and escorted 6 North Korean refugees. 2 of them were teenage orphans and 4 women, several of whom had relatives in the United States and South Korea. We took them to seek protection from the United States consulate in Shenyang, China, which is in the northeast. We were turned away by American officials while 100 feet away from the front gates of the consulate, and subsequently arrested by Chinese authorities while we tried to seek refuge in Beijing. My team and I were deported after 10 days in prison, and the refugees, thankfully, were ultimately released months later by Chinese authorities in a singular and unprecedented move to South Korea. We were incredibly fortunate not to have the refugees repatriated to North Korea, where they would have faced severe punishment, torture, or death. Other provisions of the American Act authorized over $20 million in funding in support of refugee programs, democracy promotional activities, and defector organizations, the bulk of which was never appropriated. All of this together showed either a lack of will or ability and made the American law effectively a paper tiger. There are many lessons Canada can learn from the 12 years since that original act was made into law. More broadly, the United States, the Republic of Korea, and other stakeholders have sought to use dialogue and engagement on human rights issues as a key approach in hopes that Pyongyang might see the light and change their ways. Such an approach will never work. North Korea is not a normal nation, with a government seeking to serve and protect its citizens. It is a brutal totalitarian regime ruled by a royal family and a class of vassals both in tenuous concert with one another. It does not care for the welfare of its people. It will not be motivated by promises of wealth or prosperity or offers of political legitimacy. The regime seeks only survival and the continued domination and exploitation of its people. North Korea today is presently under unprecedented internal and external pressure and is on the cusp of dramatic and sudden change. Whether such transformation comes by reform or revolution, the challenges North Korea will face are more or less the same. We have seen recently in Iraq and Libya what happens without adequate preparations and without international mentorship, and how young people without options can become radicalized. There's a great deal Canada can do now in furtherance of and preparation for that imminent change in North Korea. Canada already has a head start under the controlled engagement policy adopted as of October 2010. The first and simplest effort is to streamline a process for legitimate North Korean refugees all over the world to seek protection and resettlement in Canada. While refugees are only symptoms of a failed system, they will serve as a bridge between between North Korea and the 21st century, and they're in need of extraordinary humanitarian protection. Given the extreme difficulties North Koreans face in fleeing their country, and then subsequently fleeing China or Russia, their numbers will not be significant. Beyond addressing the symptoms, Canada is well positioned and has unique strengths that can help transform North Korea. Canada has a long and robust history of peacekeeping and strengthening civilian institutions, both areas a changing North Korea will need to develop. North Korea will also need to build a transparent police force and move away from a legacy of state surveillance and arbitrary detention, and also transition to an apolitical military. Canada does not bear the geopolitical baggage that North Korea's neighboring countries have, and can more robustly engage in helping North Korea towards a better future without being accused or suspected of subversive intentions. For example, Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms has been lauded by international experts as being an ideal model for many countries seeking inspiration in establishing prudent and liberty-minded constitutional frameworks. Such efforts can build capacity and help North Korea and East Asia move towards a brighter future, no matter how and when that comes about. Canada has also been at the forefront of advocacy for the responsibility to protect, which is a pioneering legal concept that has laid the groundwork for more recent efforts at the United Nations to call for accountability on human rights in North Korea. In a similar spirit, Canada could designate that any future diplomatic engagements with North Korea between Ottawa and Pyongyang be structured so that progress on security the economy or economic matters, and human rights only move forward collectively, not separately in silos. Canada could also spearhead an international contact group for the protection of North Korean refugees and the promotion of human rights activities. The government of North Korea is a perpetrator of mass atrocities that also sells counterfeit currency, arms, nuclear weapons and missile technologies, methamphetamines, and slave labor around the world. The problem of North Korea is not contained within its borders. It is unfathomable that despite the apparent technological and cultural progress our world has collectively attained, that we still have children enslaved as political prisoners on this planet today. What the world has tried so far in other countries has not worked. It is my hope that Canada can take the lead on more effective ways and strategies to stand for these people. Thank you for the privilege of addressing you today and for your thoughtful exploration of this issue, and we look forward to your questions.
An, a former U.S. Marine and U.S. citizen from Southern California, was allegedly a part of a group of dissidents wielding weapons as they stormed the North Korean embassy in Madrid in February. This, according to a criminal complaint released by federal prosecutors on Tuesday. Spain is also seeking to extradite An on charges including robbery, illegal restraint, and criminal organization. During the hearing, attended by his wife, mother, and about 24 supporters, An was denied bail by the judge. The judge also denied a defense request to keep the criminal complaint sealed. Prosecutors say 38-year-old An was arrested during a raid last week at an apartment he shared with co-defendant Adrian Hong, the leader of the Free Chosun group. Hong was not at home during the raid and has not been arrested. Free Chosun is a dissident group focused on toppling the ruling Kim regime in North Korea and has claimed responsibility over the brazen raid at the North Korean embassy in Spain's capital. Court documents indicate prosecutors believe An has a strong incentive to flee, as he faces more than 10 years behind bars if extradited and convicted in Spain. He's ordered to return to court for a status hearing on July 18th. 이승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
The de facto leader of the group reportedly has been named as Adrian Hong after the Madrid raid. Hong is an activist based in the US, dedicated to overthrow the Pyongyang regime. In 2005, he co-founded the refugee aid agency Liberty in North Korea, or LINK, an activist group devoted to rescuing North Korean refugees. He was imprisoned in China in 2006 for helping North Korean refugees escape. His commentary calling attention to North Korean human rights abuses has been published in many American newspapers and magazines, including the New York Times. He is allegedly known as the managing director of Free Chosun and was said to have been the ringleader of the Madrid raid, according to the BBC. Spanish daily newspaper El País also reports that the two members of the group have links with the US CIA. Free Chosun admitted to have shared some information of enormous potential value with the FBI on their request. Both the CIA and FBI declined to comment on their involvement in the raid. But the truth is yet to be revealed. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching Korea Now.